Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number 4040-7 in a 652 finish. The 4040 series from Bommer is a single-acting spring hinge, is what it is. The 4040 would be a non-template type of application where it's not going to fit into any sort of preparation that you'd have in a standard hollow metal door, which doesn't really matter because if you're buying one of these, you probably have a door from 1940 and you are in New York. Seems to be the only place, not the only place, but the place where I always see these. You stay anywhere in New York, especially in the, the upper general Times Square area, Central Park South, these hotels that were built, in the late 19th century, 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. They're full of fire-rated doors in the sense of having hinges like this that are original equipment. And they have, the doors are likely not the same doors at all, but the frame is very likely the same frame. And what they have is a door and a frame that are prepped for this really unusual hinge. And this hinge has partial tension on it, and that's the way that this ships because it is intended to be installed in this partially expanded sort of fashion. And we're going to go over the installation instructions of what this is. So you're not seeing new installations with these hinges, at least I don't. Where are these going? Oh, very interesting. These are not going to, well, they're going to somewhere in Florida. Well, they're going to a town in Florida. And it's very likely that that historic part of Florida has an old hotel, is where these could end up going. So the 4040 is representative of the series of the fact that this is a single-acting spring hinge. By Bommer. It is non-template pattern, as you can see from the very unusual pattern on those on those screw holes. This is a UL listed product. A spring hinge must, per NFPA 80, be labeled as UL listed. It is not adequate on a fire-rated door when you are using spring hinges to have a spring hinge on a fire-rated door. The criteria that must be met is if you are closing a fire-rated door with a spring hinge, the door must be self-closing and self-latching, the two cardinal rules of fire-rated doors. But when it's a spring hinge, it must be labeled. It's not adequate otherwise. I've had people order from me single-acting spring hinges, and they'll call and say, hey, I wanted to make sure I ordered the right spring hinge. Okay, yeah, everything looks good, blah, blah, blah. It'll do the job. It'll close the door. Let me ask you this. Is it fire-rated? In fact, it is. That hinge won't work because it's not manufactured by someone like Bommer or others, but Bommer is who we're talking about, that can label the product, which means they've had it tested. Okay, it has found to be in compliance with the requirements of the fire test, and they are therefore permitted to mark that hinge accordingly. So, labeling. Fire-rated products can be listed, which means they've been tested and on file somewhere in a filing cabinet. It's the paperwork that says, yes, that product was tested, here's the information, and that documentation can even be provided to an authority having jurisdiction under the duress of audit of a fire-rated opening. Or it can be listed and labeled where there's visual evidence of that. If you had a ball bearing hinge, a steel hinge by a well-known major manufacturer, it's not going to be labeled, but it sure is going to be listed. Okay, so that's the difference. They're all going to be listed if they're approved, but much of the hardware for fire-rated doors is labeled as well, and a spring hinge must be labeled. Now, having thoroughly discussed the importance of labeling and listing on hinges, let's take a look at the information down below this video a little bit in detail. Now, that information down below tells us that it is a easily adjustable spring tension. Pivot points do not align with standard full mortise hinges. They don't. You cannot use this hinge with any other hinge. You can't use it with a standard ball bearing hinge. You can't use it with other models of Bommer hinges because it doesn't apply. Even the same 4040, you can't use it with different sizes because ultimately where that vertical axis of pivoting needs to be for the hinge is not going to be a plumb line. UL listed for fire applications, BHMA grade 1 for 1 million cycles. This is found to be installed on a door, on a cycle testing equipped door, to exceed 1 million cycles. It's likely that this worked for millions of cycles. I spoke to the engineer at Bommer one time a couple of years ago, and technical questions on hinges, and I asked, how many cycles did that so-and-so hinge test? He's like, I don't know. He says, I unplugged the machine at 4 million. So the point of that is incredibly robust equipment is what Bommer makes. Factory set spring tension. We're going to go over that. Non-template hole pattern. This ain't going to match nothing but a Bommer 4040-7. The 7 is the size. Made of steel. That brings me to the part number 652. That means satin chrome finish on a steel base material. They can do other finishes naturally. It's Bommer. They can do. They have their own plating facility. Bommer 4040s are listed in the site in. Bear with me. I'm pulling it up. $600 for prime coat, 601 for bright black japanned, 603 for, that's zinc plated, 652 for satin chrome. By the time you're seeing this video, we'll have satin brass, polished brass, satin bronze, satin nickel. Oil rubbed bronze can certainly be done as well on these hinges. Trying to think if I've missed anything. Polished chrome can be done as well. So finishes are not going to be a super problem with availability of these hinges. They go on to tell us that they're non-handed, and they are. You can certainly install this on a right-hand door or on a left-hand door. It's not going to matter. The spring is going to work regardless. Maximum door weight. And that's where the Bommer hinges like this, and even larger ones than this, and this is a pretty large hinge, really start to outpace all competition. A spring hinge is not an elegant way to close a door, but there are times when it's the only way you're going to close the door you're working on. 2 hinges are going to handle a 130-pound door. 3 hinges will handle 175 pounds. 2 hinges maximum width is 3'6". 3 hinges maximum width is 4 foot. So automatically you're handling practically every door you'll bump into with just 2 hinges, with a maximum thickness, door thickness of 2 inch. Okay, you can do 1 3/4. You can make a 2 1/4 work. You're just going to have a larger back set on your hinge. But the fact of the matter is, this hinge is going to be capable. And in that New York reference earlier, when I've been in these old hotels, those doors are large. They're wider than normal. They're taller than normal. They're heavier than normal. And they have to close and latch, and that's the bottom line. Having lots of spring power is how that's accomplished with these massive Bommer springs. It's going to include screws. You're going to get all machine screws and, well, wait a minute. Yeah, you'll get all machine screws and only half wood screws. So be mindful. I would think you'd at least get all wood screws. Be mindful that, be sure to mention in the comment field when you're ordering the hinges what makeup of screws that you need. If you need all wood screws, indicate all wood screws. Or whatever, half machine, half wood, all metal screws. Just indicate that, because there are not enough screws here if this is a wood by wood application. This happens to be the standard way that Bommer packages it, but they'll give it to you the way that you require. So be sure to mention that. There are 10 holes in both of the hinge leaves. Labeled doors. Now this is where it comes into importance as it pertains to code. NFPA 80 specifically states that you basically cannot have a fire-rated door closed on spring hinges larger than 3070. So be mindful that that code exists. So that's what the code says. The bottom line is, I personally have seen fire-rated doors that exceed that size with these types of hinges. The bottom line is the local authority, the authority having jurisdiction, the fire marshal, the inspector, they have final say when it comes to this scenario. But NFPA 80 does absolutely clearly state 3070 is the maximum size. Non-labeled doors, have at it. 4 foot, 7 foot 6 in height. Every 30 inch thereafter, add another hinge. Now, let's click on the link to the template that is down below here, and that template shows us a CL 4040, and that is just only a ball tip version of the CL of the 40. That template might be there with the CL, and by the time you see this video, it may no longer be there. The point of the matter is 7-inch is the leaf height. Okay, there's also a 6-inch version of this hinge as well. The location for all the screw holes are detailed as well, so if you're not sure if this is going to match an existing, by all means check that out so that you know immediately what's happening. In terms of where the holes are going to be in this hinge before you get it. You don't want to order them to find out that you have to dowel holes, re-drill holes, or and possibly doing so might be something that you cannot do for whatever reason. The gauge of the hinge they have as 114 thousandths. Let's take a closer look at that. My caliper tells me 0.131, 0.124. Okay, so yeah, nominally close. The edge of that leaf is going to have some flare out from the press brake or the shear that bent that cut that material. So we've looked at the template. That makes sense. Let's take a look now at the installation instructions, and that's really why you're here. The installation instructions are unique for this type of hinge with this huge amount of preset tension. And I've certainly had people that have called and said, hey, I took that pin out, what am I supposed to do? So with this hinge you need to follow the installation instructions because this roll pin is there for a specific reason. So this hinge can be used on left or right hand doors. And pairs of doors without changing the appearance, meaning you don't have to ever flip this upside down. Okay. To obtain the opposite hand, you do on this hinge turn the hinge leaf upside down. So let's take a look at why they're saying that. Oh, okay. The reason they're saying that is because the positioning of the tension pin is asymmetrical. It has a different relationship to the other leaf, so that will need to be turned over. While the hinge will certainly close in either orientation, to have the same sort of look on this fixed collar, in relationship to the frame, you might flip it over. Okay, so what they're showing us in it says caution: do not try to close the door while tension pin is placed in fixed collar. The fixed collar is going to be this leaf here, where the tension pin is located in it. This, they're showing you a cross section. So what that really looks like there would be indeed for a left-hand door. Otherwise, it would look like this for a right-hand door. The point is this feature of the hinge is going to be on the frame, so that's why that would be a left hand. Okay. Now, the meat and potatoes of this is the hinge is designed to be fastened to the door and jam under preset tension. They've got the tension pin here, and that's what makes it spring back. They've got this roll pin preventing it from closing all the way. It's designed to be preset. They put that roll pin in there so that you can Get the door hung and still have enough room on either side to attach the fasteners. Do not remove the tension pin. Don't take anything out of anything at this time. The leaves are held apart less than 90 degrees, which gives room enough to fasten the hinges into position. After the door is hung, after installation, open the door to 90 and then remove the tension pin. Door will close under preset tension. So the bottom line is, that's a tension pin. That's what Bommer will call a tension pin. I'm calling this a roll pin. They're also calling that a tension pin. After the door is hung, open the door to 90 degrees, get in there and pull that roll pin out, is what you're going to do. Okay. Now, test the door. Test for operation. If it closes, great. If it doesn't, add some tension. For every hinge that you order, you're going to get a tension pin. And on this, it'll have this roll pin. For every order that you'll place, you'll get at least one tension rod. When the tension collar is pointed towards the top of the door, you're going to turn it in a left-hand scenario, where the tension collar is at the top of the door. You'll turn that clockwise, and you can remove the pin. To increase tension, you'll turn it, move that tension pin into a new hole, and then let it go. To decrease tension, it's obviously release, pull the pin out, let it go back, set the pin in the new location. If it's a right-hand door and you've got the hinge upside down, well, that's no problem. Just turn it counterclockwise. That's the really only difference. It won't look identical, that the collar will be pointed towards the bottom, and if it is, turn it counterclockwise to increase tension. You kind of get the idea of how you move those pins. So additional tension. If additional tension is desired, put tension rod into the tension collar and turn one or two holes further as shown. Then insert tension pin into the tension collar after you've repositioned it. Okay, is what you end up doing. So the amount of holes that you're going to set on the hinge leaf itself, I do not see anywhere where they're telling us how many holes not to exceed. I would not exceed probably 2 additional holes over this as it's set right now, if you go to 90 degrees. If you go past that, then I wouldn't exceed 1 additional hole. If you hear any creaking on the spring, that's definitely a sign possibly that you have too much tension set. And while these Bommer springs never break, they do break. Generally, they will break if they are old and been installed in an exterior application. The spring in there is steel. It's going to rust and eventually fail. Or they break most commonly because the amount of tension set is far too high. And the client opens the door, tension increases, snap. I heard a loud snap. How many holes of tension? I don't know, 8 or 9. Yeah, that's what happened. As soon as you move that door open, it broke. Additional tension is outlined there, how to go. That would be my guideline. Given how substantial this hinge is, if you have to get that far out on setting tension, it's time to add another hinge, would be my guess. But they do show it left and right. The installation instructions are included in your package, so you'll be able to review that. Last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo. And right above it, it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. There's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the 4040-7, 652 or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.